Hilmi Özkök is a genuine exception. All you have to do is read his speeches. You could see that the guy read widely and a great deal of literature. You read Büyükanıt's speeches, there's only one reference point, the Atatürkist system of thought, that everything has to fulfill that worldview. Başbuğ is in between the two, but Başbuğ is also very well read. And I have to say, I'm very proud. He gave one speech where he quoted one of my colleagues at Lehigh University. He had read an article by my colleague, and he quoted him. So I was very happy. So I like Başbuğ a lot. But look at the guy who's going to take over in August. General Koşanek, who's the current chief of the army. We don't really know much about him. But his speeches he has given are not very hopeful at the moment. I mean, in one of his speeches, he said Turkey has three enemies: the European Union, globalization, and all the civil society groups that are being funded by the United States and Europe. So this is not exactly a very democratic mindset. Maybe when he becomes chief of staff, he'll change. And the rap on him is that he also is not very well read, although I heard that recently that he's decided to read Habermas. I don't understand Habermas, but I don't know, he'll figure it out. But so the truth is the conditions have changed, as Professor Özbudun said. I mean, it is much, much harder today. And I will go back to what I said in my talk. The attempted coups that we see with Ergenekon, the fact that they were unaccountable until now. There were events that most people know probably in this room where they were caught lying. Forget about the coups. There were a mine incident when 6 soldiers died, and they did this huge production. They said, oh, the PKK terrorists came from Iraq. This is the way they took, and they came, and then they left. They went back to Iraq, and they put the mine. It turned out that it was a mine that the army had put there, and in its incompetence had not told another unit, and those 2 soldiers went over that mine and died. It was not the PKK. Imagine how many such, we know about other cases that we have concrete evidence, but this, if you go back all the way through into the 1990s and to the war in Iraq, there's many such cases where so confidence in the military has declined. The problem with the military was that they believed all those polls that showed the military is the most trusted institution in Turkey. I would suggest to all those people, including the military, to look at something called the Values Survey. That is a massive survey that's done by the University of Michigan. And when you look at survey results in many, many countries, the military is always the most respected institution. So the Turks are not different than anybody else. They care about their soldiers. We all do, right? So, but the military took that as saying, well, we can do whatever we want. And now there's a backlash against them, and they're weak. But that doesn't mean that the days of the coups are over. Maybe not direct coups, but the indirect coups for sure.
Let me open it up now.
I had a question. Perhaps this came up while I was in the powder room, but wouldn't you say that Taraf, the newspaper Taraf, also has made a huge contribution in this respect in terms of having the guts to publish these stories about the military? And second, with reference to Professor Özbudun's slightly pessimistic view that the military was lacking in any kind of democratic impulses, I worked for Taraf, and I know that a lot of that stuff that was leaked to Taraf came from the military itself, from officers who feel very uncomfortable about the role that it's played so far. So can we say that the military isn't necessarily this monolith that thinks, that where everybody thinks alike, and that there is real change taking within the military itself too?
Well, first of all, Taraf obviously played a very major role in disclosing certain wrongdoing on the side of the military, and it's quite possible that some of that information might have been leaked by some officers. There is no other way possible. However, we cannot talk about percentages, and a few people may leak that kind of information. We have to make our comments on public facts. For example, for me, the statements of the Chief of the General Staff or commanders of the Army, Navy, etc., are more important because these are the visible facts. I don't know how many people who leak the information. I have no way to know the general mentality within the army, but judging from the behavior and statements of the top-level army officers, I can't be optimistic, I'm afraid. For example, at one point, General Buchanan said, you know, Atatürk has a famous phrase, how happy who is that says he's a Turk. I couldn't translate it very well, but anyway, that's besides the point. Buchanan said, whoever does not believe in this word is a traitor. Come on, is this a democratic statement or a democratic value? I can quote hundreds of statements like this. So I have to judge by the statements that come to public information. I cannot comment on who leaked what.
It seems to me, if I could just add something, that there's another factor, and that is the democratization of Turkish society, the role of public opinion. If you take the case that you mentioned, the e-memorandum in April 27th, 2007, where the Buchanan essentially, it was a veiled threat that if a possible military coup if they went forward with Gül's nomination. When 2 months later you had an election in which the AKP increased its support from 34% to 46.6%, a lot of that increase was attributed to a reaction by the public to show that they were not going to be intimidated by the military. And if you think also of the signs during the protests, neither coup nor Sharia, it seems to me that it suggests that the military has always been very careful about having public opinion on its side. And I would say in the case of Erbakan and the February 28th process, it was a soft coup, but they mobilized key groups and so forth, so that they knew, in fact, that they had a great deal of support. It was clear, or at least more clear, after the e-memorandum in April 2007, that in fact there was a large part of the population which didn't want the Islamization, if you will, of Turkish society, but they also did not want to see the military come back and move in. So I think that also has to be taken into consideration. You had a woman here.
Hi, Lindsay Kuhn from the Middle East Policy Council. I'm curious as to how you feel that reforms should be implemented. Do you think that it is mostly the responsibility of the government, military, or the citizens? And if so, how do you think they should go about implementing these reforms?
Which reforms are you asking about?
Democratic, constitutional, all the ones that you've covered here, just broadly, who do you think holds the most responsibility in the country to overcome